Glad to be here. I'll start my timer too, and I know you'll keep me on track. I'm Amy Szymanski, and I am with the State Support Team Region 1, which is one of the regional service centers of the Ohio Department of Education. There are 16 regional offices that disseminate information across the state. Because we are a large state, we have around 900 school districts, so lots of smaller districts, but lots of information to get out to them. And I am currently the project manager for our state systemic improvement plan, which is, if you look at the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, each state has to prepare a 5-year comprehensive plan to address the needs of students with disabilities. So I am the project lead for that work. And I'm going to share some of the ways that we are focusing on students with disabilities around early warning systems, student success systems, and trying to also increase some of our student access and equity throughout our state. So we're just going to, real quick, just talk a little bit about some of our improvement plan topics. Each Child on Track is the name of our project, and then again point out where we promote access and equity. Right now we have too many students in Ohio with disabilities who are not on track to graduate with a regular diploma, and they're dropping out, but I've been put out, so so they're just dropping. We don't know where they are, they're dropping. I don't want to spend too much time on the pieces here, but here's a really alarming slide. If you see the red line way down there, out of all of the states and territories that report in the 2019-2020 graduation rate, we are at a 50, got kind of funky with that slide, 58.23% graduation rate for students with disabilities in Ohio, which is the third year in a row, right? Jenny, right? Horrible, right? So we know we've got a lot of work to do. The feds are explaining to us that we have to really focus on this, which we are, and I know we're going to make some changes. We also have a 16.3% dropout rate for our students with disabilities, so not only are they not necessarily earning a regular diploma like their typical peers, but they're not even making it to the finish line. So we really want to make sure we have a concerted effort to address that. So our target, we have targets that we have to set for each of our indicators. In the special ed world, indicator 1 looks at graduation rate, and indicator 2 looks at dropout rate. So we have set a statewide target of 70% within the next 5 years. So by 2025, 2026, we will be at 70% if all goes well. That's our goal. I'm not exactly thrilled about 70% because it's still only 70%, but it's considerably larger than where we are currently. And I will say, just to mention, that 58.23% is a little inflated because in COVID, we had an opportunity for students to use some course grade substitution for some of their end of course exams, which then put them into what we would consider a regular graduation, a regular diploma track. So more students with disabilities were actually earning a regular diploma. We typically were hovering in the 43% range. So yeah, so that's even kind of a bump. So what's it going to take? 2,364 students. We can do that, right? That is our growth mindset. I'm just going to walk around every single school, and we can do this. So yeah, so not only am I leading this work, I'm also becoming a cheerleader. I have to start doing a lot of pump up around the work that we're doing. But if you want to do a scan with your QR code reader, let's see if this works. You can actually hopefully visit our website through that scan. Please somebody try it and tell me it worked. Please. I used the free version, so who knows? Maybe it might have only had like 2 days that I was, did we get that?
It works.
It works.
Oh my gosh, okay, that's not good. My job here is done. That's all I really need to do. Just kidding. I don't have things on the table, but I do have some scans. So that is our website, Keeping Students with Disabilities on Track for Graduation. You will see our evaluation questions, also a couple blogs. Anne was wonderful to help by writing helping me write a blog for Grad Partnership on our work. And then we'll eventually start posting everything. We're in year 1 of implementation, so we don't have a lot of extra stuff on there. But stay tuned and you'll be able to see. Did you get it, Francis? Is it up?
Yeah, I had it on video.
Okay, all right. So that's where we're sitting. And like I said, it's called Each Child on Track. Our theory of action is popping up for you right here. And you will see, and I think we've talked about this over and over again, and this is sort of the message I've been trying to get across, to the state, region, and local folks. This is taking a village, right? This is not going to happen by themselves. That comment that Bob made about the high school principal and the dean and the business employer dude standing at the grocery line, I'm like, absolutely, this is exactly where we have to be. So we're trying to pull everybody together to keep our students on track. We are actually working at the high school level, and we're going to be looking at all students with a special focus on our students with disabilities, right? We know that students with disabilities are general education students first, so they need equitable access to all of the same opportunities that our typical peers have, right? So many times we'll say, oh, they have an IEP, they're okay. We've done them a huge disservice over time by not maintaining high expectations and giving them opportunities to, as we were just talking about at our table, to have experiences that maybe are challenging, right? And maybe they're not going to succeed right away, but that doesn't mean that they can't learn and do what their typical peers can. So the first thing we're going to be working on, some of our work is around family partnerships. We have a really cool plan that we have built as part of our secondary transition work with the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, where we have developed a learning series establishing families as partners in secondary transition for students with disabilities. It's a 7-part learning series that looks at things like universal design for family engagement, cultural and linguistic diversity, implicit bias, and we've got 7 different sessions. So each of our school districts that participate in our state systemic improvement plan will go through the Establishing Families as Partners training series with a team. So there'll be a local cross-agency team that participates in the Establishing Families works, just to really lay that foundation so that our students, so that our school personnel are able to best engage our families in a way that helps them be, prepared, involved, and empowered to understand exactly all those options that are available for their children or the students that they are working with. So that's a big piece, family partnerships. The second piece is school personnel capacity. So we have what you'll see on the one document that's the printed out, somebody please hold that one. Yeah, the implementation guide. We have built out 12 different activities that each school district will be responsible for addressing. And we have a design and implementation team at the state level who are providing support to our regional partners in each of these areas. So things such as career advising, adolescent literacy, mathematics supports. And what you'll find is this really establishes what we'll say is that universal differentiated core. So how do we keep our students, all of our students with disabilities and all of our students overall on track and not falling off track in the first place? So we have a really diverse group at the state level that represents a variety of areas, attendance, behavior, course performance, and the activities that you see there. And we ask them to decide what is it that we need to be doing at our school district level, at our high school level, to keep kids on track. And so those are the activities that we're building out through a variety of different strategies. Collaborative structures. Like I said, we have a really, really diverse team at the state, regional, and then local level. And we're starting with our district leadership teams at our high school. We're really looking at how do we start with, and it kind of evolves into this leadership part as well. We know that in order for it to get to the student level, we have to have leadership buy-in. We have to ensure that our leaders understand our data. For example, many of our leaders, when we started talking to them about students with disabilities, they didn't even realize that our graduation rate for students with disabilities was the level that it was. They had no idea what their own individual graduation rate was at their high school for students with disabilities. They had no idea how students were earning a diploma. And in many situations, as we gather data, we're finding that if they're serving a student who is not in their own building, maybe it's an off-site building for a student with more significant need, for example, they have no idea even how many kids are going to that school, what their attendance is, what their behavior. They have no way of really communicating that. So we're really identifying a lot of different ways where we haven't been working together to share data and to understand our students. So That's part of the collaborative structure piece. We've also, and you'll see in the activities section that we have, we're looking at how do we engage our business advisory councils, and like I said, career advising. So we've got employers at the table, and they're thinking about how to build work experiences, apprenticeships, internships for students with disabilities. Right, so we want to make sure not only we're looking at students without disabilities, but we're also thinking about students with disabilities, how are we engaging our VR, our vocational rehabilitation partners in that, our Department of Developmental Disabilities. And then of course, we're also looking at, and this is something I have to say, and I'm really processing it in my head as we go through, we haven't engaged our higher ed enough yet. We've got a lot of really good policy that's been starting in our state around career advising, around business advisory councils. We haven't done enough with higher ed. So that's next on my list. We got to make sure that's there. The other piece we're going to be really focusing in on is multi-tiered system of support. So I shared the early warning intervention and monitoring system implementation guide. We are going to be following the old school ABCs with our schools. So grades 9 through 12, they will use their early warning data, attendance, behavior, course performance to identify students who are off track, and then use the tiered supports to get them back on track. I think that, again, the unique focus that we have here is we're also disaggregating our students with disabilities. So we're looking at the data for all students, but we're disaggregating the data for students with disabilities and really putting a special lens on how do we ensure that they have access to all of those same targeted and intensive interventions, as well as that differentiated core that you see in the implementation guide. We have that intervention matrix that you're sharing right there. That is, this is something, right now we're building out an Ohio early warning tool with a progress towards graduation reporting function, as well as the student supports and intervention and inventory section. So once the students have been identified, we can assign them to an intervention within the tool. That's just a mock-up of what like a paper version, so to speak, would look like in the document that you see. And if you work at all with the American Institutes for Research, I'm sure you recognize that a lot of this is straight from them. We work with Great Lakes Comprehensive and AIR to pull a ton of this together. I was fortunate to be working with the EWIMS model years ago in a previous life at AIR, so it's something that's really important to me to get across.
I just want to flag it for you because a lot of this work, especially around the MTSS system, one thing that we found in Philadelphia when we were kind of investigating what needs to happen is two things came up. School teachers' attendance was an issue to address the Tier 1 grade-based standardized instruction. That was one piece that came up. And then the other piece that came out from that, especially as you think about special populations, is that school leaders and teachers may not be adequately prepared to provide the grade-based instruction for policy to increase attendance for students or reduce absenteeism, and to really address the supports and scaffolds that students need before they move to Tier 2. So I'm sure you all have considered it, but I wonder when I think about kind of our system, and we do on-track work as well, that comes up most often. As you dig down and spend time with the leaders, you can hear that they don't have the right, enough of a knowledge base and time to focus on the data, the implications, and what to do. But teacher attendance, especially since the pandemic, has come up big time across the board in all areas where we found deficiencies in the data for students.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And also teacher turnover, right, as well. Yeah, I mean, we just have some schools that are saying we're essentially a revolving door. So how, once we get something kind of established, how then do we, which I think is where we're really talking about how important it is to start getting some policies and procedures in place so that when someone does leave, you do have something that can kind of, it's not going to eradicate, but we're working on that. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. There's definitely no question. And I think that really also goes back to that shared leadership, right? We want to make sure that we have the right people at the table right from the beginning. And we got a lot of pushback at first because again, we're asking for our district leadership teams to meet based on kind of the early warning schedule, right? So at the beginning of the year, at a minimum, at the beginning of the year, after each grade, after the first 20, 30 days of school, at each grading period, and then at the end of the year. In a team time frame where they're looking at data, where they're reviewing, they're interpreting, and they're talking, and then they take it to the building leadership team and the teacher-based teams that we have in Ohio. And at first they were like, well, we can't do that. We can't set aside that kind of time.
All right.
Well, I mean, you're not going to make any change if you don't, right? So that's been, we put some funds together, so this is something that we have a package. We didn't want to pay them at first from this idea of like, you don't get paid to do your job, right? But we've also recognized that this doesn't just happen overnight. And so we have champions within our districts that are receiving stipends to kind of help with the organizational aspects of it, right? And to really start kind of cheerleading that work and helping us get the structures in place so that we have at least a meeting schedule and things like that that's consistently happening. So we're still playing around with that because Ohio has for years worked on the Ohio improvement process, which is a continuous improvement model. And we didn't realize, to your point, how much that had fallen off after COVID, right? So we had made some assumptions that a lot of the schools who had been very consistently implementing this continuous improvement model that really did speak to and allow for a lot of this to be integrated right into it has not continued after COVID. So yeah, so we really wanted to make sure that we've looked at that and incorporated that into the work. So outcomes, we want to make sure that really we're moving towards students who are engaged and really in a meaningful self-sustaining vocation. This is our Each Child Our Future plan for Ohio, is that last piece. So all students we have that for. So our timeline, like I said, it's a 5-year timeline. Right now we have 6 school districts and we have 15 starting next year, and then we'll continue to gather, we think around 8, but the word has been out, so we're starting to get a lot more people involved. Our activities start with a solid preparation for our state support teams, who in turn then take that and build foundation within our districts, and then we operate about 2 years within support from our state support teams, coaching our districts up, and then they start to fade back, and then we build in a community of practice in that last year of implementation. You've got our guide, that's one of the pieces of information that we're doing. We're adding to that as we go forward. Our rubric, we look at the data and our rubric at every grading period. So we're looking at those at every grading period to see, where's our progress, where are things moving forward, where do we need to continue to provide support. And then I think the last thing I really wanted to mention is just one of the areas that we've really been trying to make connections to when we talk about students with disabilities. We had our design and implementation team that built out those activities, but even from the get-go, and if you want, you can also try to scan that again, you should get to the National Technical Assistance Center on Transitions, Predictors for Post-School Success. We pulled out a state self-assessment to see where we felt we really needed to have a focus on what we know research tells us is helpful for students with disabilities. So each of our activities are linked to one of the predictors that you see here. So we've got things connected to career awareness, career tech ed, occupational courses. So all of our activities connect to one of these predictors so that, again, we're more grounded in research. You may have to set up a page for NTAC. They do have a login, so even if you, but if you haven't noticed the predictors or had a chance to dig into them, they're really, really exceptionally well done. This self-assessment is a great way for your districts to think about, do we have the structures in place, and then what are the essential characteristics of these predictors to help our students with disabilities demonstrate success. And the document that's kind of covered shows the level of evidence that helps support post-school education, employment, and independent living related to that predictor. So I guess I would say in closing, the project is very ambitious. We've got a lot of things going on, but in order to ensure we really have what we need, and if you're thinking about a big project or even a small project, I think one of the things that has been most instrumental for us is just that continuous, clear message that our students with disabilities are general education students first. That seems to resonate, that seems to help people recognize that they should not be separated any more than any other student shouldn't for the types of interventions that they may need, right? Those collaborative and comprehensive state, regional, district building and teacher-based teams are essential. We really are trying to build a systems change, mirroring the individuals that we have represented at our state level to those that we have at our district level, at our regional level and our district level. If we've got someone at the state in attendance, we've got someone at the region in attendance, we've got someone at the district in attendance, right? We try to mirror those particular areas of representation and then ensure that they are all able to provide vertical and horizontal support. There we go. And then last but not least, don't forget the predictors. They're somewhat kind of like, what's the word? Like aha or duh. But I think what it does though is it grounds you all in knowing that we're not leaving anything out, right? There's more predictors than what we're covering in our project, but I just feel confident that we've got the right pieces that we need. So that being said, if you have any other questions or comments about it, we do have an email box. Feel free to email me, ask me questions. If you have more guiding, nuggets of wisdom, please send them our way. We are constantly collaborating and collecting more information because it takes a village, right?